My name is Robert Henry. I'm the former Chief Judge of the 10th Circuit and a longtime friend of Lee West. Lee is sui generis. I mean, there will never be another one just like him. And I think it's appropriate that the wonderful biography about him that David Russell and Bob Burke wrote, Henry Bellman wrote a little tribute. I helped a little bit with that. The title is Law and Laughter. And Lee West thought even the law should be subject to a little bit of a sense of humor. And he made that happen in lots of places. One day, the Federal Bar Association came to me and they said they were trying to get attendance up in the meetings, and would I agree to be president of the Federal Bar Association? And I said, no, I don't have time to do that, but I'll ask my clerks to get involved and I'll give you a really good program. Why don't we have a debate between Lee West and me over the relative merits of trial judges and appellate judges? A subject of which, on which Lee West had vocal opinions. Well, we met and had this debate, which was really nothing more than a series of ad hominem attacks on each other. But it was wildly successful. People loved it. People loved judges taking pot shots at each other instead of lawyers. And people loved the sense of humor that we had. Well, it sort of took on a life of its own, and Andy Coates became our agent. Of course, he's a good agent to have, and he ended up booking us at the American College of Trial Lawyers. We also spoke in several places, but at the American College of Trial Lawyers in the fabulous resort of Boca Raton, Andy introduced us, and we had our debate. And I thought I'd just read you some of Lee West's aphorisms that he used throughout this debate. I would point out that Judge Griffin Bell, who was former Attorney General under Carter, was there. White House Counsel Alberto Gonzales, Dean Kathleen Sullivan. We had quite a crowd. Lee began by saying that he was a great admirer of Andy Coates and that Andy was a perfect example of a person who talks exactly twice as fast as he thinks. And he said he'd always remained a great admirer of Andy's because you simply have to admire any man who has retained a sense of humor even though he can't seem to retain a client or a job for very long. He talked about Judge Bell, a famous lawyer who had become Attorney General, and he said that they had the privilege to go hunting once. A lot of people know that Lee West was quite a hunter and a bird dog breeder. He said, the first time my dogs pointed a covey, Judge Bell got 3 quail on his first shot, and even more impressively, he got 1 more after the birds flew. In other words, he accused his hunting mate of shooting the quail on the ground, which is, of course, not what you were supposed to do. But he said that Griffin Bell had done the best job of rehabbing of any appellate judge that I have ever known. He gave Alberto Gonzales some advice at White House Counsel. He said, when it becomes abundantly clear that someone is going to jail, be damn sure it is your client and not you. He also referenced John Dean there, so there was a little bit of a reference to Richard Nixon there. Then, well, he also pointed out Lee could take pot shots and could be pretty irreverent, as I said, but looking out over the august group of American College of Trial Lawyers, he said, I still believe, as impressive as this group is, there is a high risk that it could be classified as a terrorist organization under one or more of Attorney General Ashcroft's definitions. So nothing like taking a pot shot at the current Attorney General. He said it was a posh place, but having spent 2 days there in Boca Raton, he said, I'm reminded of Henny Youngman's statement, if it were not for pickpockets, I would not have any sex life at all. I mean, there he is. Lee West could be irreverent even in the rarefied air of the American College of Trial Lawyers. Well, on that day's debate, he wanted to go first, but he said that he was allowing me to go second because appellate judges got to go second. And he said any advantage that I would have by going second would be offset by the fact that he had the better side of the question, the superiority of trial judges, and that he was pitted against a somewhat dull blade in this knife fight. So having set the stage, having sort of attacked Andy Griffin Bell, Alberto Gonzalez, and then he began on me. But he had a few things to say about trial judges that many of you who know him heard him say. He said trial judges are just like mules. We have no pride in the past and no hope in the future. We're very much like friendly drunks. Speak to us and we will take up with you. He said, we don't try to achieve immortality by our work. We try to do it by not dying. And he said, we really don't mind being reversed all that much, but that damned Sisyphean remand stamp should be outlawed. So, here's Lee with his backwoods accent talking about Sisyphus from Greek mythology. He was the most well-read person I think I've ever known. I bet he read at least a book a week. He always had the most interesting books in his office when I'd go to visit him. One day I went in, he was reading a book of speeches of Joseph Stalin, of all things. He was not a Stalinist, but he thought it was interesting to see how such a villain achieved the power that he did. Lee went back to attacking circuit judges, and he said, having sat on the circuit court several times, I tend to put circuit judges under a pedestal. And he said, on credibility, he said there are two basic trial judge rules that appellate judges never seem to get. On credibility, he said, never believe a man is telling the truth if you know you would lie in similar circumstances. And on juries, he'd say, don't put too much faith in people who were not smart enough to get out of jury duty in the first place. He said appellate judges, quoting the old adage, were those who come onto the field of battle after the fighting is over to shoot the wounded. And he recounted when he was chief judge and I was sworn into the circuit, he had a ceremony for me, which I had listed him down for making defamatory remarks, which he did. And he pointed out to the crowd there that he was in charge of assigning me temporary quarters while he said my palatial chambers were being renovated. He said I assigned him interior offices with no windows and no bathroom. My aim was to bring him more quickly to the same outlook and mindset held by all his fellow appellate judges. And he said it worked, pointed out that I was the very first trial judge that I reversed. That he was the very first trial judge that I reversed. That is actually true. I did have to reverse Lee on a case that Congress had a requirement that he didn't meet, and it was a minor little thing. But he did call me and say, well, Henry, it didn't take you long. But, of course, that was a very little thing. He used to quote his friend Judge Holloway. He said that appellate judges seek error. I seek error, Judge Holloway said. And in Judge West's cases, it is never hard to find. He did compliment me by saying that I had emerged as a towering figure among 10th Circuit appellate judges, which is somewhat akin, he said, to being the tallest building in Antlers, Oklahoma. He did point out that I said some laudatory things in his book, but he said writing anything laudatory is very difficult for an appellate judges. And he closed by saying, a wise old senior trial judge once told a group of us, remember boys, when you're shooting at appellate judges, aim low, because they all ride Shetland ponies. Well, that's just a flavor of Lee West's wit. Um, Harvard trained, amazing guy, extremely well read, believed in the law, but also believed in laughter. The being in a discussion with David Russell and Ralph Thompson and Lee West was always fun. If Andy Coates was there, it took on a different, even more fun aspect. He was a brilliant man, a conscientious judge, and a person with a sense of humor, the like of which we will probably never see in another appellate judge or trial judge. Thank you.